Four serving and former police officers in the US have been arrested and charged over the fatal shooting of Breonna Taylor 2 years ago. Their alleged crimes include the illegal use of force and obstruction.
Death. Attorney General Merrick Garland detailed these charges earlier. Take a listen.
The federal charges announced today allege that members of the Place-Based Investigations Unit falsified the affidavit used to obtain the search warrant of Ms. Taylor's home, that this act violated federal civil rights laws, and that those violations resulted in Ms. Taylor's death.
Well, we can now speak to Dr. SociologistRay, who's a senior fellow at the Brookings Institution. Dr. Ray regularly testifies at federal and state levels on racial equity, policing, and criminal justice reform. Good to have you with us. Thanks so much for joining us, Doctor. So with our viewers, tell them a little bit about what's happening procedurally, because they will remember this case. Then it was decided instead to reinvestigate some of these charges.
Yeah, well, thanks as always for having me on. So as you noted, in March of 2020, Breonna Taylor was killed in her home. It's important to note that Black women in the United States are significantly more likely to be killed in their home than other groups. In April of 2021, the Department of Justice launched a pattern and practice investigation into the Louisville Police Department, meaning that they saw some sort of discriminatory bias behavior that was out of alignment with the current law. We fast forward to today, we have the Department of Justice formally charging those four officers with lying to investigators, violating Breonna Taylor's civil rights, and then also playing a role into conspire to lie in terms of getting the search warrant, in terms of forging that search warrant to even go into her home.
So do you see this, because we've looked at a number of cases, sadly, of where African American men and women were killed by police officers. Do you see this action by the Department of Justice as a change in the landscape?
I do. I think it is a change. Another important part people have to remember is that these officers were charged before in the city of Louisville, in the state of Kentucky, and they were found not guilty of killing Breonna Taylor. Now, some of those officers were found guilty of actually harming or endangering others, and that was actually the drywall in between Breonna Taylor's home and her neighbor's home for shooting bullets through there. But the Department of Justice, this particular Department of Justice, led by Merrick Garland, they have been clear that they are going to investigate police departments. And it's another important point that's important. Under the Obama administration and even under President Bush, there were a lot of police departments investigated. Under former President Trump, there was zero. Biden has aimed to change that with Merrick Garland, and we are seeing that. And look, make no mistake, the Department of Justice rarely brings forth charges unless they have a lot of evidence. And in this case, the big thing is that they said that these officers met together to conspire, actually allegedly in a garage to meet, to come up with a story that matched the information that was received to cover themselves.
Yes, and of course, I don't have a response from those police officers or their defense at the moment either, which I just want to point out. When it comes to Breonna Taylor, though, Dr. Rashawn, why do you think it has taken this long to come to this point? I think with other cases, if it was Eric Garner, for example, or George Floyd, that was something that exploded into the public's consciousness very quickly. And I think it's been a different case when it's come to Breonna Taylor.
Yeah, well, look, I think it's a few factors. First big factor is video. With George Floyd, as well as Eric Garner and some others, we have video evidence. We did not have that for Breonna Taylor. That was a big thing. It was also alleged that those officers turned off their body-worn cameras and that they supposedly weren't working. So that is a big deal. People actually did not see the level of violence that happened inside of that home. The other thing is also, in a sense, the market, in a sense. I mean, we have Louisville compared to New York and Minneapolis, but people actually did cry out for Breonna Taylor. And we know that there was a civil settlement handed down fairly quickly. And people have to recognize that in the United States, whether we're talking about George Floyd, Eric Garner, or Breonna Taylor, that money comes from taxpayers. That is a problem. That does not come from police officers. It does not come from police department budgets. It comes from taxpayers. And so we really have to think about that. But I think when it comes to Breonna Taylor, the big thing is the video evidence. And also people have noted the fact that we have Black black men compared to black women. Black men are significantly more likely to be killed by police, but black women more likely to be killed in their homes. And these are the sort of stats that we need to bring to bear, because it all impacts the black community and all of us, whether we're Americans or living around the world.
Dr. Rashawn Ray, thanks so much for spending some time with us here on BBC News.
Thanks for having me.